Hey Wansi, I'm Aya. I want to share a true experience that happened to me several times when I was a kid. I was around 8 years old and my sister was 10. I grew up in a rough neighborhood where crime was almost a daily occurrence, and it wasn't unusual to see police in the area. At the time, my family lived in a small two-story apartment building. You needed a key to enter, and there were only 2 units on each floor. We lived in one of the ground floor units. One night, I was home with my little sister and my little brother, who was asleep in my bed. My mom and my dad, I was on my tablet, my sister was on hers, and my mom was cooking dinner while my dad was watching TV. Everything felt normal until we suddenly heard glass shatter in the main entrance downstairs. It was loud enough for my entire family to hear. Everyone froze and then yelling erupted outside. Moments later, someone began pounding violently on our door. My parents rushed in and told us to stay quiet and go to the kitchen. As my mom hurried us to safety, I caught a glimpse of our bedroom window and froze. It was wide open, and 2 to 4 men were staring right at us through it. The window didn't have a lock, which made it easy for them to try and get in. My sister and I screamed and grabbed our little brother, who was still half asleep. When I looked back, I saw the men struggling to climb through, but thankfully our bunk bed was pressed against the window, blocking their way and buying us precious seconds. While we huddled in the living room, shaking with fear, my sister managed to call the police. It felt like forever before they arrived. Later, we found out there had been 5 men in total. 2 tried to escape, but were caught. They were arrested for attempted murder and robbery. The police questioned all of us and eventually left 1 officer behind to watch the area for the night. My dad later had to testify in court, though I have no memory of it, and honestly, I'd rather not. Because of the trauma, my sister and I went to therapy for a while. To this day, I still don't know why we were targeted. Plenty of other families lived in that building. From what we later learn, the men have since been released, which is one of the reasons we moved in 2019. Since then, the apartment complex had replaced all the doors with shatterproof glass and added key or passcode access only for residents. Years have passed and I'm now 15, almost 16, while my sister is almost 18. I still visit that building sometimes, but that night remains crystal clear in my mind. This story happened a few months ago, and it's the reason I get so paranoid when I take public transport at night. This is what happened. My part-time job is being a tutor for high schoolers. I work in a suburb that has a reputation for being shady, but from my own experience, I never found it too dangerous. You just have to stay aware of your surroundings from time to time, especially when you see sketchy people hanging around. Usually, I'm at the tutoring center from around 4 to 9:00 p.m. But at the time of this story, our Year 12 students were getting ready for their exit exams. That meant extra sessions, extra stress, and longer hours for us tutors. Some nights we didn't leave until right before midnight. So one night at around 11:30, I was waiting for my train. The station wasn't empty. There were a few people around, but I was the only one on my platform. All I could hear was the light drizzle outside and the sound of train announcements echoing through the empty air. That's when I heard laughter coming from my left. I looked over and saw a group of tall teenage boys, all wearing black hoodies and silver chains. They were exactly the kind of people that gave this suburb its reputation. I turned back toward my phone, pretending not to notice them. They kept talking and laughing, but then suddenly their voices dropped to whispers that caught my attention. Out of the corner of my eye, I could see each of them staring at me. One of them nodded in my direction, showing a crooked smile. I froze, then quickly looked back down at my phone. Moments later, our train finally arrived. It was almost completely empty, just me and that group of teenagers. Trying to play it safe, I went to the carriage on the far right, the one closest to the driver's cabin. But the boys followed me, all of them. Inside the train, they started blasting rap music on a speaker. Loud, aggressive, violent. The lyrics were about killings, gangs, and revenge. Then one of them caught me glancing their way. He yelled, "You got a problem, I'll bash your head in." My heart exploded in my chest. I froze. He pulled out a knife, waved it just enough for me to see, and smiled. A slow, creepy grin before turning back to his friends and continuing to rap along to the music. I couldn't move, I couldn't breathe. I wanted to switch carriages, but that meant walking right past them, and I couldn't get off yet. The next stop was still 5 minutes away, so I did the only thing I could think of. I texted my friend, my hands shaking, explaining everything that was happening. He told me to take a photo of them so he could report it to the police. I pulled out my phone, took a quick picture, and that's when I realized I'd made a huge mistake. My phone wasn't on silent. That loud click gave me away instantly. All of them turned toward me, shouting. I shoved my phone into my jacket and froze, unable to understand what they were yelling, their voices all overlapping in anger. Just then, the train began to slow down. We were pulling into the next station. I didn't care that it wasn't my stop. The moment the doors opened, I ran. I jumped the payment gates without even thinking, sprinting through the station as they came chasing after me. I don't know where I was. It was a random stop, but I saw lights up ahead, a busy street, and I just ran toward it. I ran until my lungs burned, until my legs gave out, and I hit the pavement. When I turned back, they were gone. I had lost them. I got up, still shaking, and walked toward the brighter part of the street. Shops, lights, cars, people. Finally, I could breathe again. I called my friend, and thank God he came to pick me up. On the way home, I called the police and told them everything. They asked me to come in the next morning and bring my phone. The police never found the group, but I'm just thankful I never ran into them again. These days, my shifts end at 9:00, and I'm a lot more aware of my surroundings. Some of my friends tease me for being paranoid, but honestly, better safe than sorry. My name is Rema, and I am from Kolkata, India. The story I'm going to share is about a scary series of incidents that happened to my friend when we were in high school. I'll call her Priya. Priya was a very kind and sensitive girl by nature. She was a close friend of mine back then, though our closeness faded during college. Everything I'm about to say now was told to me directly by her. Coming to the story, I always noticed that Priya, despite being such a kind girl, had always faced difficulties in her life. Even in her love life, none of her relationships ever worked out. It first started to happen when we were in the 11th grade, right after her breakup with her third boyfriend in school. Suddenly, one day, she looked scared with a puzzled expression on her face, and she told me that she was seeing and hearing things. Now, anyone would think that this was a case of hallucinations caused by the trauma and depression from her breakup, but I don't know what was up with her. It didn't seem like mere hallucinations. She used to say she could hear someone whispering in her ear, or that whenever she studied late at night, she could hear a deep voice calling her name when there was no one else in the room. She told me that sometimes she would see, hear, and experience things that were completely unexplainable. She said that sometimes she felt a negative presence in her room, and sometimes she saw a shadowy figure of a girl sitting with her head buried in her arms near the dark corner of the room. She tried to ignore it and casually went on with her everyday life. I consoled her, saying she should see a therapist and try meditation because I believed what she was experiencing was just depression from her breakup. For some reason, she was very close to me and shared many personal things with me. But sadly, day by day, things were getting worse. One day, I saw that her big toe was bandaged, and when I asked what happened, she told me something that sent shivers down my spine. She said that the previous day, while studying, she suddenly felt an urge to rip off her toenail forcibly. Even though she felt extreme pain, she was struggling to stop herself as if some invisible evil energy had taken control of her body. That really scared me. It was then that I realized she was going through something paranormal because the things happening to her couldn't just be hallucinations or depression. Sure, she was depressed and frustrated, which was natural, but that didn't explain the unusual things she experienced. A few days later, I heard from her that someone in her own family had performed black magic on her and sent an evil energy to cause her harm. Later, she told me she finally explained everything to her mother, who then sought help from a tantric, a sage who practices tantra and occult rituals involving yoga, spiritual meditation, and rituals. The tantric performed a ritual to cut off the effects of the black magic, and it worked. He told her that someone from her own bloodline had done the evil practice on her. Since then, Priya has been fine and hasn't expressed any more unusual activity. It's been a long time now. We aren't that close anymore. But when I see her Instagram posts, I feel relieved that she's doing well. I'm just happy that her problem was finally resolved. Hi, I'm Aaron, and this is a true story that my father experienced many years ago. Take note that we're from the Philippines and my father was from a small town at the countryside back when he was around 14, 13 when this happened. He and his friends would often go to the Betamax to watch movies and films. Back then, Betamax was like a cinema where you'd only have to pay 1 peso to get in. It was a 15-20 minute walk from their house, so they would often hang out there. So after the movie ended, my father and his friends were walking home. It was around 8:30 p.m. But since they live on the countryside, the nights there were often super dark and creepy since street lights in that area were rare. Soon, my father and his friends separated since they lived in different towns. As my father continued walking, he saw an old man beneath a street light. Sensing as it was dark and the old man looked weak, he approached the man and asked him, "Excuse me, sir, but why are you still out? It's dangerous out here." But the old man just stared at him. Due to the stories around that time and the warnings that his mom had given him, my dad then felt that something was off about that man. So he waved to the man and then quickly walked away. Around 5 minutes later, he noticed that the man was following him. However, as he turned around to see, it seemed like the old man had seen that he was following him. He could only see the back of the old man. My dad then got the chills, started to walk faster, but then he noticed that it also started to walk faster. Then he full-on sprinted to their house. While sprinting, he checked to see the old man, and what he saw will forever be engraved in his mind. He said that he saw the old man on all fours crawling towards him with its body backwards, its head peeking underneath him, looking at him. That filled him with adrenaline, and he bolted to their house, kicking the door open, which startled his mom, and quickly locked the door. As soon as he locked it, a loud thud was heard from outside the door. He dared not look out. He explained to his mom what had happened, and his mom was obviously terrified. He could only scold him for going out late at night. This happened 3 years ago at a motel in southern Arizona during a business trip. My company had booked the room last minute, so I arrived late that night, exhausted after a long drive down the dark highway. The shabby neon sign flickered red, and only a few vehicles, a truck, and a couple of old cars, sat in the parking lot. At the front desk was an old man with a blank expression. "Long drives are tough, aren't they?" he said. "You look like you're about to faint. Please go to room 107. The room was small, as I expected, but not terrible, except for the strange framed paintings on the wall. I don't remember them clearly now, but one drawing looked like something between a gargoyle and a bat. It gave me chills. I muttered to myself, wondering why anyone would hang something like that in a motel room, and went to the bathroom to take a shower. Later, I was lying in bed drifting off when I heard footsteps in the hallway. Normally, I wouldn't have noticed, but these were loud and they stopped right outside my door. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Time passed and whoever it was still hadn't moved. My heart started to race with a sudden, inexplicable fear. But I was so tired, I could barely keep my eyes open. I managed to call the front desk and told them someone was standing outside my door. They asked me to check, but I hung up, too exhausted, and eventually fell asleep. When I opened my eyes, it was already morning. I asked the old man what had happened the night before. He said, "Oh, that guy from yesterday. He was standing still in front of your door." I watched him quietly. He didn't move for about 10 minutes. When I approached him, I saw his eyes were closed. I asked what he was doing. He didn't seem surprised, just smiled at me and said he was fantasizing about killing the person in that room. He told me exactly what he imagined doing. It was pretty disturbing stuff. He said he was picturing himself breaking the shoulder blade of the person inside, the man at the desk side, and continued. So I told him to stop bothering other guests and go back to his room. He just stared at me with that same smile for a while, then quietly packed his things and left. I thought about calling the police, but since he hadn't done anything, I let it go. I watched him drive off onto the highway, and that was it.